This is Grace Notes. I'm Alan Button, and pleased to have as our guest today, Mary Strickland. Mary is someone about whom we could say a lot of things, and we'll cover a number of those as we go along. But let me start by saying something about Mary that is, in certain respects, just incidental. And that being, Mary is the Vice President of Nursing at Nash UNC Healthcare. And I describe it as incidental because there are a lot of things in her life that go way beyond her position at Nash UNC Health. And the kind of person she is not fully described by any means in that title. Anyway, Mary, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here.
Tell you what, Mary, let's... Speaking of other things in your life, tell us a little bit about your history, where you came from, and about your family.
Well, first of all, I was originally from Chesapeake, Virginia. That's where I was born and raised. My parents, Janice and Pete Elliott, my dad was in the Navy, and that's how he landed around Chesapeake, Virginia. And he and my mom both were school teachers, and my two sisters and I, we all three came to North Carolina for college. And so I never went back to Virginia. I met my husband while I was in college, and that's how I landed here in Nashville, North Carolina.
And you were in college at Atlantic Christian, which is now Barton College.
That is correct. I came down here in 1982 and to pursue a nursing degree. It's kind of funny. My dream was to go to James Madison University, and I applied at JMU, and I did not get in. My test scores were not high enough. And so I truly believe the Lord had a better plan for me because I came to North Carolina. I went to Atlantic Christian, loved every minute of it. It was a great school, the Bulldogs. And that's where I met my husband. And I am married to my best friend. We've been married for 36 years. So that was the plan all along. I just had to kind of figure it out. Yeah,
you have the sense you've figured out that it was meant to be.
That's right.
And speaking, by the way, of test scores not being high enough, this comes from a lady who has since gotten her doctorate. We'll come back to that. Tell us, Mary, about your children.
So Mike and I, we do live in Nashville. We started out, he worked for his dad. They had a dairy farm in Nashville, and I was a nurse when I graduated, and I was working at Duke. And Mike and I had started our family, and Cole came along in 1990, and he is a wonderful son. He loves the farm, loves his family, and he is married to a beautiful wife, a young lady named Casey, and they have a little 7-month-old daughter named Heidi. And if there's ever been anybody that has loved being grandparents, that is Mike and I. Casey works at Braswell Family Farms there in Nashville, and Cole is actually the director of Nash County Soil and Water Conservation. Our daughter, Casey, she's kind of, again, Casey. That gets a little tricky around our house.
Did you mention your son's wife?
Yeah,
his name
Casey.
I may have missed that this time around. But, yeah, so you've got two Caseys.
Two Caseys, and that gets a little tricky. But my daughter, Casey, and that's how we do it, my Casey and Cole's Casey. But Casey is my mini-me. She is a nurse. She graduated from Barton, which was Atlantic Christian in 2017, and she was a critical nurse for several years, and she now works at Nash County Health Department. And she has a wonderful husband, Brandon, and he is a teacher for Nash Rocky Mount Schools and the middle school for history and social studies. And they have two wonderful children as well. Dawson is 3.5, and Evie is 10 months old. And so, again, Mike and I have a great time. We're the typical farm family where we eat together just like Walton's Mountain and work together on the farm. We all work off the farm, and it is always something going on.
Tell us a little bit more about the farm.
We have about 50 head of cattle. We still have some dairy cows. We like to show our dairy heifers in some competitions throughout the year.
The farm started out as a dairy farm.
It was a dairy farm. That is correct. And in 2009, Mike's dad sold out. And so, but we kept a few heifers and we kept it going. My son had this dream of really getting the beef cow herd started. He was the one that was the instrument behind that vision. And he was drawn to the shorthorn breed, which is a very docile cattle population. They're easier to manage. They don't get wild. And you can walk right out in the pastures and pet them. I mean, they're really very easy to take care of. They're beautiful, too. Absolutely beautiful. And so we started out with 3, and we have about 40 now. We actually raise our own meat to sell. We have a small store there between Nashville, North Carolina, and Castalia, North Carolina. And we also, Mike and I, we also raise about 200 acres of hay. So we keep that farm kind of busy.
Now, how do you do that and also serve as Vice President of Nursing at Nash UNC Health?
Well, when I say we, I kind of say that a little tongue-in-cheek because I'm really more the supervisor. I kind of tell them what to do. They would probably be laughing at that right now, but really Mike and Cole are the backbone, and the rest of us really do what is needed. And sometimes I might be the one cooking the supper for everybody, but we all have our part that we play.
But you know how to drive a tractor.
I did. Mike taught me that in our early years of marriage, and some of my roads were a little crooked, but I was able to do it for sure.
You mentioned Dawson. I understand that he is an occasional singing partner of yours. Dawson, your 3.5-year-old grandson?
Yes, I have a passion for children and music. I have been working with kids and music in the church. Really, I was 16 years old in my home church back in Virginia, and they asked me to lead a children's choir back then. And I've been doing it ever since. I took a little time off when I had my children, but I bounced right back. I do enjoy children and music, and it's nothing any greater pleasure to describe than being there at church singing with your own grandchild, This Little Light of Mine. And it puts a whole new perspective on the light and the concept, as the Lord has just blessed me so much.
Well, Mary, that ties in well with this first song you've selected. Tell us about We Are Family. Why that song? Family's
important. I truly believe that, your family is your support, your best friends, the one that can get you through the tough times and celebrate with you during the good times. My dad was the youngest of 12. He was close to all of his siblings. I am still close to some of his nieces and nephews today. My mom has a sister that we all adore. My parents raised my sisters and I. It was all about family. We are still very close today. And then that is how Mike and I have raised our children. Family is important. And it's not uncommon for us to hum that tune or bring that music out when there's a celebration going on with the family. And it just brings it all into perspective that we are family. This is who God put together. And we're going to, be together no matter what. And it doesn't mean we always agree. Doesn't mean we always want to do the same thing, but what it means is that we're connected.
Beautiful. Let's hear it. We Are Family by Sister Sledge. That was We Are Family by Sister Sledge. And if you're just joining us, our guest today is Mary Strickland, Vice President of Nursing at Nash UNC Healthcare. And I'd like, if we could, Mary, is to hear a little bit more about your working background. After you graduated from college, you went to Duke in nursing. If I got that right?
That is correct, in 1986.
Tell us what you did there, and then what happened after that.
I went to Duke. I was hired to work in their neonatal intensive care unit, and it was truly a rewarding experience. I was there almost 5 years, and I took care of patients that you could hold in the palm of your hand. They would often come in weighing between 1 pound and 2 pounds. Saw a lot of great, successful outcomes, and obviously there were some times that left me with a few tears as well, because some of these little babies really were fragile, very fragile. And I worked in a time when some of the technologies that we have today were not available. And I think that's the sort of cool thing about healthcare and medicine, is that we continue to discover and find new ways and innovative ways to do things that for the better of our patients, so that they can have better outcomes. So it was a rewarding experience, a lot of fond memories. Had a great team I worked with, and I learned a lot.
Strikes me that it fits in with what you were saying earlier about just enjoying working with kids. Tell us where you went after that.
So I did, I worked there, like I said, about 5 years, and of course I was commuting from the farm in Nashville. And after we had our first child, Cole, it was just a little too difficult to keep that drive up. And I did want
the drive to Durham.
Drive from Nashville to Durham. It was 65 miles from the farm to the parking deck. And so that was a lot. After your 12-hour days became about 14.5-hour days. So did that for, like I said, about 4.5, 5 years, and then it was time to kind of have a new plan. And I wanted to pursue my education, so I did go into teaching. And I taught for 1 year at Nash Community College, and then I was very fortunate to get an offer to go to Barton College, my alma mater, and teach in their OB and Peds semesters.
Obstetrics and
pediatrics, that's correct. And so I did that for 5 years. And I did get my master's degree in the middle of that in 1993 from ECU. And then it was really kind of, again, I think it was just part of God's plan, but Nash General, back then it was Nash General Hospital, came to Barton for a career day. And they had set up a table, and they were really trying to interact with the students, the ones that would be graduating. And I happened to go over there and talk to them. And the person that was there was the leader for the pediatric department. And so we connected. We scheduled an interview. I mean, this has been some time ago, but what I remember is that they offered me a position to work part-time on their peds unit. And I worked full-time at teaching, and I would work part-time working at Nash. And it was a great experience. I really kind of found my love for Nash began there.
You left out that at that time you were also supervising the farm.
I will, yeah. Oh, yeah. Continue to keep everybody in line at the farm as well. But we had also had our second child in the middle of all of that, too. And so I was working those two jobs, and we had 2 kids. We had the farm, and so the manager for the Women's Center at the time announced her retirement. And so my boss on pediatrics said, you ought to apply for that. You love the babies. You've worked in NICU at Duke. You've got your master's degree. Why don't you apply? And so I did. And so they offered me the position. And so I did lead the Women's Center for 23 years. The interesting thing is that Ms. Sneed, that was going to retire, she wanted to retire about 6 months before my academic contract would have been over at Barton. And I just didn't want to break my contract at Barton. And I wanted to fulfill that commitment. And so Ms. Sneed agreed to stay on longer. So, again, I feel like the Lord had a plan the whole time, because I've been now at Nash for 28 years, and it's been a great ride. I truly believe I was called to be a nurse. I think I've been very fortunate in the career path that I've had. I've been very blessed, and I wouldn't trade 1 minute of it. Even going through COVID and those tough couple of years, there was a reason that happened too. Sometimes I try to figure that out, and I think too hard about it, and then other times I realize I just got to keep moving, and it'll all come together. But I've enjoyed my career, every minute of it. Walking in the steps of Florence Nightingale. Yeah, she's one of my heroes, and love to read about her, love to study about her, and she is famous for the innovation that she had during the Crimean War, and I truly believe that those of us that went through COVID and failed forward with different tactics and strategies to take care of the patients and to provide the best care we could for our community, that we're going to have our Crimean War stories as well, just like Florence. In fact, you took your current position just before COVID started. I did, just months. I was interim for a few months, and I applied and was very honored when Dr. Crystal Hayden offered the position to me in December of 2019. Little did I know, that the COVID was on the rise, and in March we would be taking a totally different direction. I had a vision and plans and things I wanted to do in my new leadership role, but we had to pivot. We just had to pivot and take care of what was in front of us.
I want to come back here in a little bit to some of maybe a story or two about any particular patients that maybe are examples of what makes you tick, why you do what you do. But before we do that, tell us about this next song. You're a Dolly Parton fan.
I sure am. I have been, seems like my whole life. I've often said, if there's a person I could meet, she would be one of them. But I think her songs speak to me. All of her songs speak to me. There's not one that she sings that I don't find a message in. And, I really like Jesus and Gravity. That song really resonates, I think, with my life. There are times when you go through tough times and you need to be grounded. And gravity, is what sort of keeps us up and moving and walking, but Jesus keeps us grounded. And so that's a great song. But 9 to 5, I think, kind of summarizes a little bit of my work life. I mean, obviously in nursing we worked 12-hour shifts, more 7 to 7. But if you kind of listen to the words, we do sometimes get up and struggle and need that coffee to get it going because of what happened the day before. And we are kind of tumbling down the street just trying to, get into our next disaster or challenge that's going to be in front of us. But the song's kind of fun, and it just kind of perks you up. And there are times that I have dressed up like Dolly Parton and actually sang that song.
You may need to see that sometime.
It's a sight.
Let's hear it. 9 to 5 by Dolly Parton.
Tumble out of bed and I stumble to the kitchen, pour myself a cup of ambition and yawn and stretch and try to come to life.
Mary, you've had a long career in nursing, and I gather you're still going strong. But are there any particular patients or situations that kind of jump out at you, come to mind if I were to ask you, and I will ask you, give us an example of why you do what you do, patient-wise.
Well, I think when you go into nursing, it's truly a calling. You know you will be serving others. There will be long shifts. And there are some days that you walk away kind of thinking, why do I do what I do? But I think what you have to do is sort of focus on what's in front of you, and what kind of difference you can make. Because today you might make a small difference that you see as small, but it might be a big difference to the patient that you've served. I think about when I was at Duke and taking care of the smallest of the small. And I had a little baby that I really bonded with. I bonded with the family and really took care of him for months. Like I said, early in my career, we didn't have technology. These babies sometimes stayed in our unit for months,
How far along was he when he was born?
He was about at 6 months, which would be about 24 weeks. Uh-huh. And that was really very, very young, very small for that era of time. But he did well and progressed well. And so we stayed in touch. And I can remember sending him a book every year on his birthday from Nurse Mary. I wanted him to know, what he meant to me. He was sort of a career turner for me. I was more confident when I was taking care of him. I'd been there a few years. He was one of the smallest ones I had had. And so he just held a special place in my heart. And so after a few years, I just kind of lost touch. Life goes on. I had my own kids coming along. And
he was in school at that point?
Yeah, he would have reached. I think I gave him a book every year till he went to kindergarten. So somewhere about 4, 5, 6 years old, somewhere in there.
He was getting books elsewhere eventually.
Right. And so it was kind of interesting that I ran into another nurse. And we got to talking one day, and I was working with her, and it just kind of came up, my early career at Duke and kind of the years I was there and where I worked. And And I started talking about my love for those babies, and she said, "Oh my, are you Nurse Mary? You've got to be the Nurse Mary." And I said, "Well, I'm not sure. Who are you thinking about?" And she told me. I said, "Yes. How is he doing?" And by this time, he was older. I don't remember now how old he was, but I do remember not long after that, I did get an invitation in the mail to his high school graduation 18 years later.
And the relationship between that other nurse and the baby?
They were aunt and nephew. So it was, it was really special. And so, we get a lot of awards through the years. All of us do, whatever career we're in. But I can tell you, I still have that high school graduation announcement, and I can tell you right where it is.
I think that ties in pretty well, Mary, with the song that we're going to wrap up with. But I'd like you to tell us how you came to select the theme from Call the Midwife.
Well, Call the Midwife is one of my favorite shows. It is 11 or 12 seasons. I have watched it all the way through twice. It is an amazing depiction of the nurse relationship with patients in a time when poverty and technology was not available, and just to see the advocacy that those nurses in that show have for their patients is amazing.
We're talking mid-20th century?
Yeah, it was in the early 50s is when it originated. Okay. It depicts in Poplar in England, and babies were born in the homes. They didn't have facilities, and of course you watch that evolve in the show, and that's what's kind of neat about the show is I can remember some of the episodes where they started using penicillin and different medicines and things that we take for granted today. And so it just gives you a different perspective. I truly think that those nurses, have long shifts and long hours. They're on call just like we do today. Long shifts, long hours, and being on call. And I think it's just a nice reminder of where we are today, where, we were in the 50s. And what it is to be a nurse. It's truly a calling. I truly believe it is a calling. If you can go to work every day and do what you love to do, it's not a job. It's just a part of you. And that's how I feel nursing has been for me. Now, I know the latter years of my career, I've been more in administration, and I've been, working more on different types of things related to healthcare, not necessarily at the bedside. But I still like to think I make a difference. I still like to think that the work that I do, the decisions I make, the projects that we work on, I've never forgotten what it's like to be at the bedside and to know what it's like to take care of patients. And I still find myself going upstairs and going into patients' rooms and spending a few minutes with patients each week, just so that I can always have that perspective of what it's like to be a nurse taking care of patients. I think for me, I have been truly blessed with my family, with my life, with my career, and to be able to do what you want to do every day is just really cool.
Well, speaking of being in administration, you no doubt have a lot of nursing staff members who look up to you as an example, and no doubt you are continuing to have great influence on not only them, but a whole range of patients as well.
Thank you.
We're going to hear a short version of the theme from Call the Midwife. You get the last word, Mary. Anything else you want to say about the show, or anything else for that matter?
I think in summary, I would just like to say thank you again for having me here. And as I have reflected a lot in preparing for this, I think there's probably just one piece of advice I would give to those that are out there that are listening that might be thinking about a career in healthcare, and do they need to give it a try or not? And I would say, just as Nike says it, just do it. It's a great way to spend your working life, is taking care of others.
That's a great place to end it, I think, Mary. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
It's been a real treat. Let's hear it. The theme from Call the Midwife.